Orion Vale gazed out the cockpit window of his descending ship, watching as it approached Calora 7. The sprawling starport loomed large against the horizon, its slender indigo spires a grand statement of the Kalari civilization's advanced engineering. Orion had seen plenty of alien architecture during his years as a special forces captain, but the Kalari always had a flair for the dramatic that surpassed everyone else's efforts. "Just a routine repair job," he muttered, adjusting the tools on his belt. "Go in, fix their quantum drive, get paid, get out, no fuss." The ship's AI chimed politely. "Alert, local atmospheric distortion detected, manual landing recommended." Because of course there's distortion. Orion cracked his knuckles, taking the controls. Nothing's ever simple in the Orlax region. Fighting turbulence that nearly rattled his teeth loose, he guided the vessel through Calora 7's thick atmosphere. By the time he set the ship down on the designated pad, he was drenched in sweat. Stepping onto the boarding ramp, he felt the pull of the spaceport's artificial gravity field. All around him, Kel-Saren citizens, tall, indigo-skinned Kalari, rushed through the bustling terminal, their shimmering formal robes catching the light like liquid alloy. "Terminal access granted," a musical voice announced. "Welcome to Calora 7, Engineer Vale. Please proceed to customs." Orion shouldered his duffel bag and wove into the crowd. The Kalari gave him a wide berth. Humans weren't a common sight here. He'd taken only a dozen steps before the throng abruptly surged backward, shoving him off balance. "Clear the way for the Imperial procession!" someone yelled. "The what?" Orion blurted as his boot struck something solid. The crowd parted in alarm, and Orion pitched forward, arms flailing. He caught a few flashes of shocked indigo faces before colliding with something, or someone, soft. A startled yelp punctuated his crash landing. It all happened in slow motion. Orion's hands shot out on reflex. One arm seized someone around the waist. His other hand landed somewhere that definitely wasn't appropriate for a public embrace, sending an icy jolt of dread through him. When his vision steadied, he found himself sprawled at the feet of an extremely regal-looking party of Kel-Saren. 3 breathtaking Kalari women, clad in ornate ceremonial armor, stared down with expressions of shock, fury, and, in one case, faint amusement. "How dare you!" snapped the tallest among them, the one he had apparently grabbed by the waist. Her hand hovered over an energy blade at her hip, her face set in furious indignation. Yet, in her eyes, Orion saw something else flicker. "I am Citra Oral, first daughter of the High Matriarch." "Oh no," Orion breathed. The shorter woman beside Citra, the one he'd initially slammed into, adjusted a high-tech visor perched on her head, smirking. "Well, well, a human who literally falls for Kalari nobility. I'm Ara Nyx's second daughter, and you, clumsy off-worlder, have made this far more interesting than I anticipated." The third sister, the one he'd inadvertently groped, glowered at him. "You're lucky I'm already married. Otherwise—" She let the threat dangle ominously. Scrambling to his feet, Orion raised both palms in surrender. "Ladies, I swear, this was an accident." "Silence!" A voice like thunder cracked through the terminal, silencing everyone. The crowd parted to reveal a towering figure in even more elaborate armor, electric energy dancing across its surface. She fixed Orion with a stare so intense that every combat instinct he had screamed at him to stand down. "You dare lay hands on my daughters?" she demanded. Her tone could have frozen molten steel. "Your Excellency," Orion began in his most diplomatic voice, "I tripped. It was purely accidental." "Tripped?" The High Matriarch's eyes narrowed, molten gold against deep indigo. "Into not one but 2 of my unmarried daughters?" A murmur spread through the onlookers. Orion noticed several guards subtly blocking escape routes. Even unarmed, they looked dangerous. He forced himself to stay calm. Twitchy body language never helped when dealing with armed royal guards. "Mother," Ara Nyx interjected, tapping her visor. "My sensors indicate that the local gravity destabilized him legitimately. Though," she added with a grin, "his recovery was inelegant." Citra Oral, her energy blade still faintly humming, snarled, "He grabbed me as though I were some common—" Now, Ara teased. You can't deny his reflexes are decent. Most humans would have face-planted outright. The matriarch raised a hand, cutting off their bickering. Human, do you comprehend the consequences of your actions under Kalari law? Orion's stomach churned with sudden dread. He'd heard rumors about Kalari customs regarding marriage, but that was absurd, right? I might need clarification, he croaked, hoping he was wrong. Physical contact with an unmarried daughter of the imperial house constitutes a binding proposal, stated the matriarch, her voice echoing through the dome. Contact with multiple daughters. She let the implication hang. Hold on. Orion's voice cracked. Are you saying that because I accidentally touched them, I'm married to them? Citra Oral's glare could have started a fire. To both of us. Orion's gaze darted between the sisters. Citra, rigid with anger, and Ara, watching him with a calculating gleam. This can't be real, he managed. It is, the matriarch intoned. Unless you refuse. That would be an unforgivable insult to the imperial house. If you try to flee, she added, her lips curling in a cold smirk. Every bounty hunter and royal enforcer in the Oralax region will pursue you until you're brought to justice. Orion's heart hammered. He'd survived tight spots before, but this was insane. Isn't there a law about interspecies marriages? Ara tapped a data icon on her visor. Kalari law makes no such distinction. In fact, we have records of 17 historical Kalari human unions. None, however, were quite this spontaneous. Count your blessings that I'm already bound to another, the third sister muttered. 3 might have been too much. Your Excellency, Orion said, turning back to the matriarch. There must be a way to solve this without— There is not. Her declaration left no room for argument. You have 3 choices, off-worlder. Accept your obligation and join our house, reject it and face immediate execution, or run, and be hunted until we find you. She glanced at the horizon, where Kalora 7's sun was beginning its descent. Decide quickly. The ceremony must be done by nightfall. Ceremony? Orion echoed, his voice rising. Tonight? Ara consulted her visor again. Kalari protocol is quite specific. The marriage must be formalized within 1 planetary rotation. I will not share my quarters, Citra hissed. Nor will I, Ara agreed, though she sounded more curious than disgusted. Ladies, Orion tried once more. Maybe we can talk about this somewhere in private. There is nothing to discuss, the matriarch snapped. Guards, escort my new son-in-law to the preparation chambers. In seconds, Orion was flanked by a quartet of towering Kalari guards in gleaming combat armor. One seized his arm with a grip that made it clear just how outmatched he was. Wait, he yelled as they dragged him away. Don't I get some kind of legal counsel? Ara Nix gave him a mischievous wave. You'll have advisors. So many advisors. Buckle up. The last sight Orion caught before the ornate doors slammed shut was Citra and Ara glaring at each other, while the third sister merely watched with a mix of confusion and grim fascination. The following hours blurred by in a flurry of preparation. Orion was stripped, scrubbed, and forced into ceremonial robes that clung to him like living metal. A team of royal protocol experts took turns drilling him on Kalari traditions, their exasperation growing by the minute. No, no, no! Groaned Vesser, the lead protocol official, rubbing his temples. You bow before the oath, not during it. If the oath wasn't 17 stanzas long, Orion muttered, maybe I'd keep it straight. 17 is the shortened version, Vesser corrected. The full version is 112 stanzas, which we thankfully lack time for. Orion tugged at the shimmering collar that seemed to expand and contract with his heartbeat. Another question. How do I avoid inadvertently proposing to more princesses during this ceremony? Vesser paled. Please do not joke about that. The last time we hosted a multiple betrothal ceremony centuries ago, it ended in a minor civil war. Lovely. Orion flopped onto a seat carved from the same living metal. Any chance either bride might call this off? They cannot. Vesser paced, arms flailing. The law is absolute. Not even the matriarch can override it without losing face before the entire Kalari Empire. And for a royal Kalari to lose face is worse than death. Yeah, I picked up on that, Orion said, then rose as another attendant beckoned him. So this is really happening? Unless you prefer exile or execution, Vesser said with a pitying shrug. The ceremony commences in 20 minutes. Try not to accidentally touch anyone else. The Imperial Hall was enormous, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadow. Hundreds of Kalari nobles filled the tiered balconies, their vibrant attire creating a mosaic of shifting color. Orion stood on a dais, ignoring the urge to fidget while Vesir straightened his collar for the 100th time. Remember, bow, then speak. Also, do not look directly at the matriarch's crown, Vesir whispered. Its refracted quantum crystals can disorient human vision. Before Orion could ask more, a thunderous procession march echoed through the chamber, like a battle anthem fused with an alien lullaby. The crowd rose as the great doors swung open. Citra Oral entered first, her ceremonial armor even more elaborate than before. She moved like a predator, each step precise. An energy blade dangled at her side, powered down but radiating menace. Ara Nyx followed, her high-tech visor replaced by a slender coronet of holographic symbols. Data sets shimmered above her brow, dancing in time with her measured steps. She looked simultaneously bored and wary. The matriarch herself brought up the rear, her presence filling the cavernous hall with an almost physical force. The quantum crown perched on her head flickered in and out of Euclidean impossibility, so Orion quickly diverted his gaze before it gave him vertigo. Once they reached the dais, Orion noted the two brides standing as far apart as possible, each refusing to glance at the other. Perfect. He was about to be thrust into a triple arrangement in which the participants hated each other. The ceremony, thank the stars, was shorter than the rehearsal. Orion stumbled through some of the more complex Kalari words, but no one drew weapons. Vesser later assured him that was a positive sign. By the end, he found himself bound by law to two of the most formidable women in the Aurillax region. Neither bride looked especially thrilled. The union is sealed, the matriarch proclaimed, her voice echoing. Let any who would object speak now. Dead silence. Then, by the ancient codes of Kalora, I present my daughters with their new consort. May this union strengthen the imperial house. She regarded Orion with a predatory gleam. And may our consort prove worthy of the honor we have granted. The guests began to file out. When Orion looked back at the dais, both brides had vanished through separate exits. The matriarch hovered, watching him thoughtfully. So, Orion ventured, throat dry, should I be asking about honeymoon customs? You have much to learn about our traditions, she said, stepping closer. Her presence crackled with authority. Starting with understanding that humor is not always wise. Understood. Orion stiffened his spine. Your Excellency, despite the strange circumstances, I promise I'll treat this with respect. Do you? She studied him, so close that he could feel the energy radiating off her armor. Then know this, son-in-law. My daughters mean more to me than every world in this empire. If you cause them harm, by will or by neglect, there is no place in this galaxy you could hide. He swallowed. I understand. No. She offered a smile that revealed unsettlingly sharp teeth. You do not. But you will. She turned to go, then paused at the threshold. Welcome to the family. Day one of married life began with an alarm he didn't set, and a hovering holographic memo flashing in front of his face. Combat training in the East Wing Arena. Citra. He'd barely managed to tug on a snug training uniform left outside his door, when another notification overlapped the first. Emergency in the engineering lab. Quantum core malfunction. Need immediate assistance. Ara Orion raked a hand through his hair. No breakfast first, I guess. Weighing the risk of a meltdown in the lab versus the threat of missing a lethal combat session, he decided a quantum breakdown sounded more urgent. Navigating the labyrinthine passages of the Imperial Palace was tricky. It felt as if the corridors themselves shifted when he wasn't looking. By the time he reached the lab, the doors hissed open to reveal Ara Nix leaning over a glowing console of advanced holograms. She didn't glance up. "You're late," she said, hands dancing through streams of data. "And you're wearing combat gear." "Your sister demanded training," Orion said flatly. Ara's visor flickered with feigned innocence. "How unfortunate, since you're here." She gestured at a bioformed chair. "Sit. I need to run a neural scan on you." Orion remained standing. "But you mentioned a core meltdown?" "Minor flux." She waved off his concern. "Fixed it before you arrived. But while I have you, I need to calibrate your neural interface." The lab door slammed open. Citra Oral stood there in sleek training armor, energy blade humming. "Sister," she said icily, "you're interfering with the consort's combat lessons." "Am I?" Ara gave a saccharine smile. "I thought I was preventing a catastrophic quantum explosion that could vaporize half the palace." "There was no true meltdown," Citra snarled. "I confirmed the logs." "Oh?" "I wasn't aware warrior training included advanced quantum analytics." Orion quickly positioned himself between them. "Maybe we could schedule time." "Stay out of this!" they snapped in unison, only to glare at each other for the momentary agreement. "The consort requires a warrior's discipline," Citra insisted. "We have enemies." "The consort requires neural stabilization," Ara countered. "Unless you want him accidentally activating palace defenses mid-spar." "I do have a name," Orion grumbled, but they ignored him. "Fine," Citra said, stepping back with a scowl. 2 hours. Then he's mine." She shot Orion a final piercing look before stalking off. "Well," Ara said wryly as she pulled up another batch of holograms, "that went better than expected. Sit." She pointed to the biotech chair. "And try not to think about my sister. It interferes with the readings." So went Orion's new routine. If he wasn't enduring grueling sparring sessions with Citra, who seemed intent on molding him into a legendary fighter, he was being roped into increasingly complex engineering feats by Ara, whose experiments always seemed urgent. Between these sessions, he discovered clues that something was very wrong in the palace. Patrol schedules out of sync, unmarked ships docked at odd hours, random comm arrays firing up without clearance. "Security's got some holes," he mentioned to Citra one day, mid-training. She responded by slamming him onto the mat and hovering her blade near his throat. "Explain," she demanded, deactivating the blade and hauling him up. "I found scuff marks near a maintenance hatch by my quarters. Could be unauthorized movement. Possibly a covert infiltration." Her expression hardened. "Show me." A quick investigation uncovered multiple hidden surveillance devices. Citra's jaw clenched. "Impossible. Our security is ironclad." "No such thing." Orion knelt, studying the advanced transmitter. "I used to specialize in poking holes in unbreakable systems." An explosion suddenly rocked the palace, rattling the windows and setting off shrill alarms. Smoke billowed from the direction of the engineering sector. "Ara!" both shouted, sprinting off. They found her coughing amid a ruined lab. A prototype quantum regulator had been blasted apart. Examining the scorch marks, Orion recognized sabotage rather than an accident. "Someone tried to kill you," he said grimly, scanning the debris. "Nonsense," Ara wheezed, then wobbled. Orion caught her waist before she collapsed. For a moment, she leaned into him, her usual poise slipping. "It was a calibration glitch," she argued, though her voice shook. "A glitch that overrode 3 safety protocols?" Orion gently brushed away some soot on her cheek. "This was no accident." Citra was already scanning the scene, tension radiating from her. "This is deliberate." And that was just the start. Over the following weeks, attempts on both sisters' lives escalated. A training drone's safety features were mysteriously disabled, firing live plasma at Citra until Orion tackled her out of the way. They landed in a heap, Orion on top. For a split second, they froze, faces inches apart, hearts pounding from adrenaline, and something more. "Quick reflexes," Citra murmured, her cool demeanor cracking. "Special forces training," Orion replied, acutely aware of the heat radiating from her. "Though I've never had such strong incentive." She almost smiled, then remembered herself and pushed him away. We should examine the drone's code. Sure enough, it had been tampered with. Someone high up possessed access codes. Meanwhile, Orion found himself spending more time with Ara as well, assisting her in the lab late into the night. She was brilliant and bitingly humorous when her guard dropped, and she had a habit of leaning in close, letting her hand linger on his arm a heartbeat longer than necessary. "You're not what I expected," she admitted one night, the two of them surrounded by quantum readouts. "When you barreled into my life, you assumed I was a blundering fool who ruined your day." He smirked. "Something like that." She slid closer, adjusting a projection. Her breath was warm against his ear. "I'm glad I was wrong." During combat practice, Citra's once furious scowls eased into something akin to respect. She demonstrated graceful martial forms more like a dance than a fight, and their bouts became charged with unspoken tension, a swirl of movement and lingering contact. "You learn quickly," she commented, hands resting lightly on his shoulders. "You're almost worthy of an imperial consort." "Because you're an exceptional teacher," he teased, trying not to stare at her lips. "Though I'm starting to think these lessons aren't just about combat." Citra abruptly pulled away, a flush darkening her cheeks. "Everything is combat, in some way." The rivalry between the sisters was still there, but changing, shifting from icy hostility to something more playful. They still tussled over scheduling Orion's time, yet it felt more like a dance than a battle now. Their shared predicament forced them into an uneasy unity, especially as the evidence of a conspiracy mounted. Orion cross-referenced flight logs, odd security footage, and shipping manifests. The pattern that emerged was bigger than murder attempts. It was a potential coup. Late one evening, he was in Ara's lab when she slipped inside without her usual fanfare. "You should be sleeping," she said, stepping behind his chair. "So should you." He pointed to the displays. "Look, shipping records. Someone's smuggling high-grade quantum devices off-world." "Interesting." She leaned over his shoulder, breath soft on his ear. "But that's not why I'm here." Orion rotated to face her. "Oh?" "I've been thinking." She hopped up onto a console edge. "About our situation. About you." "That sounds dangerous." "Extremely." Her sudden smile held a predatory warmth. "You've proven yourself quite capable and surprisingly intriguing. High praise from a quantum genius. Don't ruin it with jokes." Still smiling, she began leaning closer. Whatever she intended was cut short by klaxon alarms. Lights strobed red as a computerized voice boomed. "Security breach in the royal quarters. Multiple hostiles detected." Ara's eyes met his in horror. "Citra." In seconds, they were both sprinting through the palace, the wailing alarms echoing off polished walls. Guards in full combat gear rushed past, but Orion's gut said something was off. The infiltration seemed too organized, as if planned down to the second. "This is no random assault," he called over the noise. "They chose shift change, right when the main security protocols reset." "Exactly," Ara shouted back, data flickering across her visor. "Whoever it is has top-level knowledge." Rounding a corner, they found the entrance to the royal living quarters in utter chaos. Energy blasts streaked through the corridor. Citra Oral was defending herself against 3 armed attackers, wearing only a thin sleeping tunic. Though wounded by a grazing shot, she was holding her own. "Down!" Orion tackled Ara as searing bolts sliced overhead. Rolling to his feet, he grabbed a fallen guard's rifle. "You good?" She nodded, conjuring holographic controls. "Trying to override the palace security system, but something's interfering." "Inside job," Orion snapped. "They have admin codes." He fired off 2 rounds, dropping one of Citra's attackers. Citra's energy sword whirled in a deadly arc, finishing another. She flinched when a shot grazed her shoulder but didn't slow. "Well, if it isn't my dear family," a mocking voice rang out from beyond the carnage. More guards in black armor moved in, led by Venara, a high-ranking council member, and the matriarch's own sister. "You!" Citra spat, slashing another attacker. "Traitor!" Venara stepped forward, calm amid the bedlam. "For the good of Calora," she replied, voice dripping with scorn. Your mother is en route to the emergency bunker, exactly as protocol demands. But you three are becoming an inconvenience. An instant later, everything went dark. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the palace in crimson glow. Lockdown initiated, a mechanical voice announced. All sections sealed. Impossible, Ara growled, pounding a flickering control panel. Only the matriarch has that level of authority. Or someone using her codes, Orion reasoned, finishing off another gunman with a well-aimed shot. They're cornering her in the bunker. Citra retracted her blade, panting. We have to reach Mother before Venara does. Checking the corridor, Orion saw no easy path. Half the guards might be compromised. We'll have to go through the lower tunnels. Ara brightened. Maintenance passages. I can manipulate the sensor arrays to draw the attackers away. They exchanged a glance. No time, no margin for error. Let's move, Orion said. Skirting the locked-down corridors, they slipped into the subterranean passages. Citra took rearguard, ignoring her wounded shoulder, while Ara used her visor to throw up false signals and decoy alerts. At last, they reached the bunker level. Pausing at a corner, Orion peered around. He spotted Venara and 8 heavily armed guards outside the bunker's sealed doors. The High Matriarch was presumably trapped inside, alone. I see it now, Ara breathed. Venara wants the throne. With both Citra and me out of the picture, and Mother tragically lost, she'd be next in line. Let's spoil her plan, Citra snarled. Orion smirked. I have an idea, but I'll need your best acting. Moments later, alarmed shouts echoed down 2 different corridors. Soldiers readied weapons as Citra and Ara burst into view from opposite sides, apparently locked in a personal battle. Their energy fields crackled, swords flashing. This is your fault, Citra roared, feinting dangerously close to Ara's visor shield. Mine? Ara shot back. You always were the matriarch's favorite. Enough, Venara barked. It appears you two will destroy each other before I even get involved. Where's Mother? Ara spat, though her eyes flicked meaningfully to Orion's hiding spot. She's safe, Venara replied smoothly. For the moment. When you've both killed each other, I'll be heartbroken at the tragedy. But the Empire must move on. Just then, Orion emerged from the shadows behind Venara. Before she could even turn, he had an arm around her neck, pressing a confiscated plasma pistol to her temple. Don't move, he growled. Ah, the human consort, Venara sneered. You're just a minor inconvenience. Funny, Ara chirped, tapping her visor and expanding a swirling purple gas across the corridor. The black-armored guards collapsed instantly, eyes rolling back as the aerosol took effect. Venara struggled a few seconds longer before sagging in Orion's grip. That nerve gas is non-lethal, right? Orion asked, still holding Venara. Mostly, Ara said, checking a readout. They'll wake up with splitting headaches. Citra immediately sprinted to the sealed bunker. Placing her palm on a scanner, she unlocked the doors to reveal the High Matriarch alive and angry, but unharmed. Daughters, she said, stepping out. Her gaze flicked from Venara's unconscious form to the dissipating nerve gas. I see your new husband has been busy. Your Excellency, Orion began. I can explain. No need. The matriarch stepped over Venara's limp body, expression unreadable. I suspected my sister of treason, though I did not expect her to act so boldly. You have done well. Citra blinked. You knew. I had suspicions. The matriarch's eyes shone with cool satisfaction. It's partly why I allowed this marriage to proceed so quickly. I needed someone to unify you two. Someone resourceful enough to see the truth. You set this all up? Orion asked, dumbfounded. The marriages are genuine law, the matriarch said. But perhaps I arranged for the gravity near your docking platform to malfunction at just the right moment. One must plan ahead. Ara's visor dropped, and her jaw tightened. Mother! Don't look so shocked. A leader must think many moves ahead. The matriarch's voice went gentler. You've done even better than I hoped, son-in-law. You exposed the conspiracy, and you brought my daughters together rather than driving them further apart. Orion looked at Citra and Ara, realizing their rivalry had morphed into something else, trust, maybe even affection. So, about our living situation, he said carefully, meeting both sisters' gazes. I'm not choosing between you, and I don't think you want me to. Citra's hand found one of his, while Ara took the other. The matriarch studied them, then let out a quiet laugh. It seems my plan succeeded more than I dared imagine. She swept from the corridor, calling over her shoulder. Oh, and Orion? Yes, Your Excellency? Try not to topple into any more princesses. 2 is quite enough. Over the next days, the palace went into recovery mode. Orion found himself in uncharted territory, juggling not just physical training and advanced engineering, but now a genuine 3-person relationship. Yet it somehow worked. Gone were the hidden sabotage attempts and treacherous rivalries. In their place blossomed an odd harmony. You're in my spot, Ara announced one evening when she came into the observatory lounge, finding Orion and Citra snug against each other, watching Calora 7's colorful night sky. There's room for 3, Orion said, patting the cushion. Citra shifted to allow Ara a spot without complaint. Once, she would have bristled, but not now. Seating herself, Ara deactivated her visor for once, letting Orion and Citra see her unfiltered face. Mother's planning another family banquet, and you know how long those last. Citra let out a theatrical groan. Please don't tell me it involves reciting the entire house lineage. All official dinners are mandatory, Ara replied, doing a mock imitation of the matriarch's stern voice, making them laugh. But maybe this time she'll spare you the extended version of the family tree. Unlikely, Citra grumbled, though she was smiling as she leaned against Orion. Official dinners grew less painful for Orion as he slowly learned Kalari customs. He even mastered some formal protocols, though on occasion Ara or Citra had to nudge him mid-ceremony if he forgot not to crack a joke. The matriarch herself seemed amused by his fumbling. Between public events, the 3 of them managed to carve out normalcy in their daily lives. Their sleeping arrangements combined into one vast suite, though frequently they all ended up entwined in the center of the bed, half buried in shimmering blankets. You're freezing, Citra complained one night. Blame your sister, Orion mumbled. She's been fine-tuning the climate controls again. I'm optimizing sleep cycles, Ara retorted. Slight temperature drops enhance restful REM states. Is that also why the ceiling shifts colors at 3 a.m.? Orion grunted. No, that part is just because I got bored, she said with a mischievous grin. They found their groove as a peculiar but devoted family. Orion learned when Citra needed a no-holds-barred sparring session to blow off steam, and when Ara required someone to listen, really listen, to her quantum theories. In turn, the sisters came to share not just Orion, but each other's time, forging a closeness they'd never had before. The matriarch watched it all with approval, satisfied that her grand design had borne fruit in ways even she hadn't predicted. But surprises weren't over. Ara first announced her pregnancy at a family dinner. She barely touched her dessert, which was her favorite, so Citra noticed immediately. Are you feeling okay? Orion asked softly, concerned. Ara exhaled shakily. I've run personal medical scans. I'm about 6 weeks along. Silence fell. Then the matriarch practically glowed with pride. Wonderful news. The first imperial grandchild. Truly cause for celebration. Orion's fork clattered. He stared, thunderstruck. I'm a father? Obviously, Ara teased, though her cheeks colored. Unless you think I was running quantum experiments with someone else. He kissed her without regard for protocol. But as soon as they pulled apart, he caught a strange expression on Citra's face, somewhere between happiness and wistfulness. Not long after, Citra also discovered she was pregnant. She reacted by training even harder at first, as though childbirth were a battle she had to dominate. But eventually, she relaxed enough to accept the palace medic's advice. Morning sickness and sword sparring do not mix, Orion observed as she dashed to a waste bin during one session. Shut up, she groaned, though she grabbed his hand, letting him steady her. The palace buzzed with excitement over the dual pregnancies. Servants fussed, expansions were made to the royal nursery, and the matriarch looked smugger by the day. Meanwhile, the sisters grew closer, comparing notes on cravings and med scanner results. When the third sister, the one already married, showed up for a visit, the now famous triple wedding fiasco had softened into a comedic anecdote. Her name was Rena Sol, and though her own marriage was complicated, she took genuine joy in celebrating her sister's blossoming new life. Ara Nyx gave birth first, during a late-night experiment. Naturally. She remained shockingly calm through initial contractions, rattling off wave pattern predictions between labored breaths, until a particularly fierce contraction had her crushing Orion's hand and cursing in Kalari. Their son arrived squealing, already mesmerized by the blinking lab lights. 2 months later, Citra Oral went into labor. True to her warrior spirit, she approached the event like a combat mission. Pain is just another foe to conquer, she declared. Orion suspected she changed her mind about halfway through, given how tightly she squeezed his arms. Their daughter let out a fierce wail, as if announcing she was the next future warrior queen. The entire palace rejoiced at the births. Ara and Citra's children were quickly joined by Rena Sol's twins, heralding a new generation of royals. The matriarch, doting on her grandchildren, orchestrated elaborate naming rites that spanned days. Despite the pomp, those gatherings were full of genuine warmth. And so, the Kalari Empire adapted to its growing family. Babies with different temperaments. Ara's son curious and brilliant, Citra's daughter feisty and strong, formed friendships with their cousins. The nursery rang with giggles, squeals, and sometimes small quantum mishaps when Ara's child got hold of prototype gadgets. From the vantage of time, Orion would reflect on how strange and wondrous it all was. He'd arrived on Kalora 7 expecting a dull repair job. He'd gotten 2 wives, uncovered a coup, toppled a traitor, and helped usher in a new era for the Imperial House. One evening, as the 3 of them lounged in their expanded living space, Ara tinkering with a miniature quantum toy while Citra gently rocked their fussy daughter, Orion felt a deep sense of belonging. The council wants you to negotiate that new trade deal, Ara reminded him, setting aside the gadget. You did well with the Orion delegates. You drank their champion under the table, Citra pointed out, a trace of pride in her voice. And recited quantum theory, Ara added. Backward. Only because you taught me, Orion teased. My memory's improved, but I still can't handle your advanced math. Then we'll keep practicing, she said, sliding closer. He felt Citra's gaze, warm and familiar. Her hand brushed his. We'll handle everything together. After all, it's our family now. The matriarch, quietly watching from the corridor, allowed herself the smallest, most satisfied smile. Everything had turned out even better than she'd engineered. Love, loyalty, and an empire stronger for it. People across the Aurillax region told legends of the human who fell into imperial marriage and transformed a dynastic house. Most didn't know the full truth. That a single stumble, part accident, part subtle manipulation, triggered a series of events that shaped the fate of Kalora 7 for generations. Asked if he would change anything about that day in the bustling starport terminal, Orion Vale always shook his head with a grin. Not one misstep,